Hello everyone, I hope you're all fine. Welcome to the part 2 of my car/truck animation tutorial. If you're looking for part 1, the link will appear somewhere on the screen and in the description. Let's start with one of the most important aspects of any visual project, the light. And before we dive in and I simply tell you what lights I use, let me explain my thinking process so you will have my methodology in case you would like to use it for your project. The first thing I ask myself is, when does the action take place? In my case, it's during the night. Thanks to this information, I can now decide realistically what are the lights I could possibly create. The options I have selected for this scene are an HDRI, the street lamps, the headlights of the truck, the building's lights, and the most important one, the fake moonlight. For the HDRI, I'm personally using SceneSky's HDRIs. They are very high quality, easy to integrate, and for me, they are simply the best Sky HDRIs out there. But of course, you also have free alternative. You just go on polyheaven.com and you choose a night HDRI. It would be better to choose one with some details in the sky, like clouds or stars. Let's say you like the Blue Lagoon night. I will put the link in the description. You just download the file, and to install it, you just go in shading. You select world. Let me zoom a bit. You press Shift A, and you search for environment texture, like this. You plug the color in the color, and here you click on open, and you select your file. So HDRI and Blue Lagoon. And to see the result, you have to go in render mode, so Z and rendered. I see there is something off with my camera. I think I did something wrong. So let me go in the camera. And yes, it's not 01, but 09 that it should be. Okay, that's better. And also, normally you should have Node Wrangler installed. But if it's not the case, remember you go in Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and you just type Wrangler, and you activate the Node Wrangler add-on. And you click on the environment texture and you just press Ctrl and T. That will create a texture coordinate and a mapping node for you. It's very useful if you want to rotate the HDRI. But first, one very important thing that you have to do for this project, for the look we are looking for, you have to lower the strength of the HDRI. So I think we should do maximum 0.01. Because yeah, like this. Because we don't want too much light, and here you have a feeling that it's a night scene. And if you want, you can rotate the HDRI, so on the Z axis, I think, yes. And maybe you can look for an angle that you prefer, yeah, maybe something like that, or like that. Anyway, it's up to you, the HDRI on the rotation. Only the strength, be careful to be something very, very low. So let me delete that now. And put 1, and I just want to show you the one I'm using. So for the one I'm using, I just click on World Properties, and there is an add-on that is given with the SceneSky's HDRIs. I just click on List Installed Collection, and Ross, North, and Forest, and I think I used this one in my project. And I press Set Sky. As you can see, I have a lot of information in the sky, so let me lower the strength. I think I went for 0.2 or 0.3, or maybe 0.3, yeah, something like that. And then for the rotation, you have also an option here. Yeah, I think I use something like that for my project. For the street lamps, I use an area light. If you're using my city pack, the light is already there. If not, let me show you how to create this light. It's a Shift A, you go in light and area, then numpad period, let me just move that, okay. Then all you have to do is to fit the light in your street lamp. And to do so, you can scale it by pressing S, or S with the axis that you want to scale. Or you can simply go in the item dimension here on the scaling and scale whatever you need. You can also rotate it, so it's the same, but you have to press R. And you can do that here also. So this is exactly what I did for the street lamps. I just created an area light and put it there. Yes, and one more thing, for the area light I have created, as you can see, they got an ellipse shape. So you click on the area light and you go here on the object data properties when you have your light selected. And instead of square here, you can change to disc or ellipse. And in my case, I think it was disc. Yep. And if you're not using my assets, in the street lamp, don't forget to create an emission light. Let me show you. I will go in render mode. The thing with lights is that they are not emitting any lights at the origin. So if you want to have this light effect, you have to create a material for that. And what I did is just, if we look at in the shading of this street lamp, I have just created an emission node for this square inside. So it has some lights coming from it. Otherwise, the street lamp would be like this. You see? You still have the light coming from the area light, but you have nothing in the source. That's why you need this material to simulate that there is a light source inside the street lamp. And we can verify that in the final result. This is not the area light. This is the emission node I have created for the material inside the street lamp. Concerning the power of the light, you click on your light and you go in Object Data Properties. And for my case, I choose a power of 10 watts. But it's okay if you prefer 8 or 6, but not more than 10. You don't want those lights to drain too much attention. As you can see, 10 is more than enough, but I think 8 or 6 would have been better. And because you use Alt-D to duplicate the street lamps, all the street lamps power will update when you update one. Concerning the building's lights, they are mainly here for the style and for the mood, but they are not really lighting the scene. With the power of 170 watt, and I have selected some color to give some style. And as you can see in the final result, they are mainly here for the decoration. For the truck headlights, it was just 2 small planes for each side with an emission intensity of 30. The idea for the headlights, you just create one and you duplicate the 3 others. So when you change the intensity, every plane is updating at once. I did not use area lights when the camera was in front of the truck because of the fog, which was resulting in a strange effect. But I did use area lights when the camera was on the side to see the lights beam, as you can see here. But then I forgot that it's a beginner tutorial, so let me quickly show you how you can create those lights. So you press Shift A, you go in Mesh Plane, and let me raise it again. I will scale it down, numpad period to zoom on the object. I will scale it down maybe like that, and I will rotate it on the X, 90 degrees, and let me move it. I go in top view, Shift Z, and I move my light here. Okay, let me go back now. So I scale it like that. Okay, and on the Z a little bit. Sorry, on the Y. Yeah, I think now it's nearly the same size. And for the material, you just go in shading, you press new, and you change the emission color to white, and you change the emission strength to 30. And that's it, you have a light. So to parent it to your truck, you just select your light, you Shift select your truck, and as usual, Control P and keep transform. So the plane will be parent to the truck and will follow it. And then you duplicate the 3 others and you parent them to the truck also. And finally, there is the main light of the scene, which is this big guy, this area light. And as you can see, it's a pretty long light and it's nearly the size of the road. So, or maybe the size of the path, just for your information, in case you want to reproduce this area light. And as I said, it's an area light. The color is slightly blue to give the mood I wanted to the scene. And I set the power to 3000 watts. And if we check what this light is doing, as you can see, and let me turn off this light so you will see the result. So as you can see, this is really this light which is doing all the job in the scene. So this light is very, very important. And this light is lighting and is giving all the effect that we need in the scene. And as you can see, this light is giving details in the trees. And because it's only on this side, those trees has no details, but it's giving some contrast in the scene. And it is exactly what I wanted for this animation. Because now, if I add the fog, as you can see, the result is beautiful. And in the final result, we can really see the job of this light here, which is giving some details here and not here. I really love this shot also, this shot of the side, because the camera is on the side where there is no lights. And this is really what we are looking for when you're shooting a scene with a dark mood like that, to have the camera in the opposite position of the light. So once again, that's just an area light which is doing all the job and giving all the atmosphere to the scene. So that's it for the light. Sorry if it was a little bit long, but I really wanted to give you as much details as possible so you can have all the information to recreate the mood you're looking for. Before we deal with the camera animations, let's add some fog for the volumetric light and for the dark atmosphere. In Blender, you press Shift A and you go on Mesh and Cube. I will press a numpad period and raise my cube a bit. From there, I will change its dimension. So you press N on your keyboard and you go on the item tab. And here you can easily access the scaling. So let me scale it to have it all around the road. So for the cube, be sure to be just a little bit higher than the top of the trees and to cover the entire road and the sidewalks. Then you go in shading and you press new. Here you delete the principal BSDF. And you press Shift A and you search for volume and you add a volume scatter. You plug the volume to the volume and I went for a density of 0.03. But of course you can try it yourself and change this value to fit your need. With your cube selected, you can go in Object Properties and you scroll down and in the viewport display you select Display as Wire. And now if we go in render mode, this is the effect that the cube is bringing on the table. So let's deactivate it so you can better see. It's off and now it's on. Perfect. Now we can continue with the camera animation. We are dealing with a big truck, a massive vehicle. So I knew right from the start that we couldn't use big camera movements or having the camera swinging around. This is a truck, so it's supposed to go in a straight line, ignoring everything on his way and around him. He's in control, you know, he's the boss. But for this scene not to be visually boring, because a straight line is boring, the solution then was to have different camera angles to give some rhythm to the animation. Let's start with the first one, the front view. You press Shift A to add a new camera, so camera, and here you press on this little icon to activate this camera. If you press 0, that will be the view of this camera, but first let's go there, maybe something like that, and you press Ctrl Alt 0, so now this is the view from the camera, and I will press N, and view, and click camera to view. So when I make an update, it's directly from the camera itself. First, as I said in first part, we want the succession of speed, so it's better to have a wide focal length. So we will go for a standard 24mm. Of course, we activate the depth of field and we put the focus point on the focus. Now I will look for a framing that suits my need. By the way, it's better if you go in frame 1 to do this initial framing. Okay, I like this for the first position, so I press I on my keyboard to add a keyframe. Be sure that in keying you have location, rotation and scale already selected. Then you go on the last frame, so frame 200, and I press N to move my camera faster, so maybe it's minus 200, nearly. And I will end with something like that, I guess. And with your camera selected, you press I again to add another keyframe. With all the keyframes selected, as usual, right-click interpolation mode and linear. So let's check the animation. Okay, so it's going on the straight line. That's exactly what we want. As I said, we don't want big camera movements, but at least we need some camera movements. So let's try to add some. So around frame 50, I will move maybe the camera here. Let me play with that to have more precision. And maybe just move it like here, and then press I to add a keyframe. And around frame 120, as I said, no big swings. So I again, let me test. Okay, so we're going on the right side and on the left side. Okay, that's perfect. Of course, at the moment, the camera animation is not smooth, so let's fix that. You drag another window, you go here in graph mode, and you can see we have sharp edges in the camera animation. So to fix that, you select all the keyframes by pressing A, all the keyframes, and key sample keyframes, and you press Alt 0 to smooth those edges. And now, if I test again, and now as you can see, the transition between the camera positions are smooth. Okay, cool, that's it for our first angle. So, of course, for this first part, we don't have to render everything. We can only render the frames that we need for our animation. In my case, I think I only render 100 frames or something like that. And to do so, you just go here in Output Properties, and from the frame range, you select the frame that you need. So, for example, 100 to 200, and that will be the only frames that will be rendered when you press render. And now let's create a second camera angle, and to do so I like to create a new file. So file and save as, and you might want to name the new file with the angle you selected. For example here, let's do a close-up, and you press save as. So why do I like to have a file for each camera angle? It's because when I change my framing, sometimes I'm changing the light, I'm changing the positions of the different objects, and I'm cheating a bit. So to not mess up with the other angles, I like to have a file for each camera framing. For the close-up, I did change my camera focus length to 50mm, and like for the wide front view, I just created the left and right animation. For this view, I did add a little bit of camera shakeify. I selected the Spaceshift Shake 2D and a value of 0.3. If you don't have the add-on, I will put the link in the description. It's very straightforward to install and to use. For the side view, I did cheat a bit because I added a bunch of trees and bushes in front of the camera to add to the sensation of speed and depth to the scene. And as you can see in this window, my camera is not going on a straight line, it's getting closer and closer to the truck, like a dolly. I did this because I wanted to focus on a truck and to give a more dramatic feeling to this shot, like we are getting closer and closer to the monster. And I also added some buildings, you know, like this, because I love the fact that sometimes we see the truck, sometimes we don't. This is why it's important to have one file for each camera angle, so you can cheat a bit on each file to do whatever you need for this specific angle. For the final shot, I wanted to go back in front of the truck because I think this is the best view to appreciate the monster, but not to be boring. I wanted a small variation compared to the first shot. So I did this dolly in front of the truck, and then I went back. And finally, I went deep in the truck. So for the first time, we can see its actual size. And now you can see the final result of those different shots. So this is the first one, the front one. Then we went on the zoom. And I think this is a good transition between this one and this one, because it's like we are discovering the truck and now we are going in more details. And then there is this side shot where we can appreciate the sensation of speed because we have a lot of objects passing by, trees and bushes, etc. And finally, we have this final shot where we reveal the actual truck. Okay guys, that's it for the camera angles and camera animation. Let's create the rain now. First, we want to add a plane, Shift A, Mesh and Plane. So let's change the dimension of this plane. You press N on your keyboard and you go in the Item tab as usual. And for the dimension, X should be around 70 meter and Y 40 meter. This is the value that I use for this project. And let's rotate this plane on the X axis for around 53 degrees. I'm going to raise it a bit, so 13.7. And I'm going to bring this plane next to the truck. Now we are going to parent this plane to the truck. But of course, I forgot to go in frame 1. So first go back in frame 1. And move your plane again to be next to the truck. Okay, so let's parent it to the truck now. You click on your plane and you select your truck, Control P and keep transform. Now if I press spacebar, my plane is moving with the truck. Perfect. So as I said, you are going to emit the rain from this plane. You click on the plane. You go in particle properties and you press plus. And yes, it's already on emitter. I went for 800,000, I think, particles. And I wanted the particles to be already there when I start my video. So for the frame start, I went for -100. So as you can see, we already have some particles around when we start the animation. Before we continue, let's create the object that we will use as a raindrop. Press Shift A and you select Mesh and Icosphere. Let me raise it, GZ, so I can see it better. And let me move it on the side. I press numpad period. I go in edit mode, so you press tab to go in edit mode, or you go here and select edit mode. You have to activate the proportional editing. You can press here, this little icon, To activate, it has to be blue. And let's select the top vertex. And you press G and Z. And one thing, if you want to change the proportional size, you just have to wheel up or wheel down. Scroll wheel up or scroll wheel down. So I will do something like that. And GZ. And then again and again. And maybe a little bit more. Oh, sorry. Okay, and you do the same with the bottom one, GZ. Okay, cool. Okay, let's go back in object mode. You press tab, and maybe we could scale it on the X, just like this. And right click, shade smooth. Okay, it's good enough. Now for the material, you go in shading, you press new, and you delete the principal BSDF. Shift A, you search for glass BSDF, you connect the BSDF to the surface, and yeah, it's okay like that. Now the final step, it's a little bit too big for now, so let's change the scaling. You click on your object and S, it's very small. You should be around 0.02. Now we go back on our plane, so I click on the plane, and here in the particle properties, you scroll down in the render section, render as, you select object. Let's do a scale of 0.3. And maybe I will just deactivate the viewport display for now. For the scale randomness, you go for 0.1. And we don't want to show the emitter. You activate the object rotation because we will have to find ourselves the correct rotation. And for the instance object, you select the object we have created. So it's icosphere 001. You scroll up until this rotation option and you check it. For the orientation axis, you select object X. The velocity should be 1 here. And I know it's not realistic, but for the mass, you are going to use 0.1. I tried different values and this is the one which was working for me. And this is the result that you will have. The rotation is good, the scaling is good. So we do have everything that we need to cache our simulation. And to do so, you click on your plane and you go in the particle properties, and here you will have a cache section and you will have a bake button to bake the simulation. And it's very important to do that. First reason, we want to spare some render time because all the frames are already in cache concerning the simulation. And there is another reason. So when you will render your scene, you will render it using this rain effect, and then you will create a second render. Let me show you. You will go back in frame 1 and you will render only the rain. So if you don't have this disable render button, you just go here on this little icon and you activate the disable in renders. So you deactivate everything for the final render, the lights, the trees, and the cube for the fog, the icosphere, and you leave only the camera and the plane. Don't forget also, you go in render properties and you scroll down until film and you check transparent to not render the HDRI background. And with everything off, you do another render. Don't worry, if you don't see much in your render, at the end you will see something like that, slight droplets. But that will be very useful in post-production. So you just render your 200 frames like that. So if I summary, you have a render of your scene with the actual rain in it, and you also have another render with only the rains. Okay, cool guys, now I think we have everything that we need to go in post-production and to tweak our animation. And this is something that we will do in part 3, so I will take the time to once again detail everything. DaVinci Resolve color grading and editing, and After Effects for the lights. Don't hesitate if you have questions to ask them in the comment section, and thanks for watching and I talk to you soon. Bye bye.